I'm Ben, and this is Facing East, and I am here with Michael and Nicole, and we're going to talk about natural family planning today.
Hi, my name is Mike Ortego. This is my wife, Nicole Ortego. We're from Louisiana, from Diocese of Lafayette, and I have to apologize. Yes, we are Roman Catholic, but we live here. We currently have one child right now, a daughter, a little girl, who's not home right now. I work at a John Deere dealership, and my wife works at a part-time at a crisis pregnancy center in Lafayette. Just to give a little background on us, we're both raised Catholic. Not much to tell, really. We always been Catholic. I kind of slipped away from my faith for a long time. I met Nicole, and she really brought me back into it. And we've been married for 12 years. We had our first pregnancy with a miscarriage, and then we had our little girl who's now 10. And then we had a little boy named Joey, or Joseph, who we call him Joey. And he was born with a lot of medical issues, and he unfortunately passed away in April this year, which, I mean, we were told he wouldn't live to see 2 years old, and he lived till 8. But we are currently discerning having another child. That's, grieving, but and discerning and all that. And we've always practiced NFP, and it has been a huge blessing to our marriage.
My knowledge of NFP is limited to pretty much what my girlfriend has taught me about it.
Mike could say the same.
This is true.
I feel like that's how it works for guys, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Normally, yeah. He loved having our sessions too with the.
Oh my gosh. If you go and your girlfriend get married and you have to take NFP classes, they will show you some of these most disgusting pictures you've ever seen. I was so grossed out by the tacky and different types of mucus and
terrified by the fact that our instructors had several kids.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Our instructor was this woman who was telling us how well NFP works, and she's sitting there pregnant and 7 kids running around, and I'm like, you're not instilling a lot of confidence in me.
Oh.
But I mean, to be fair, that's not what NFP is about. I mean, NFP is also about having children. Actually.
Yeah,
right.
In reality, most of the couples that I know that say they practice NFP don't. They are familiar with NFP, and they teach NFP, but they don't practice NFP because they're able to have large families, and I mean, good for them if that's what you're able to do.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I'm one of 9, and I mean, my parents say that they practiced NFP to get pregnant at points, but I mean...
Yeah. I mean, we planned our pregnancies.
Yeah, I mean, we've been married for going on 12 years now. We've never had an unplanned pregnancy.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the thing, too. You got to be careful not to use NFP as a form of birth control. That's not what it is. Even the church gives guidelines on who should and should not use NFP.
Right. It's it's a tool to be able to wait if it's a situation that you don't want to necessarily get pregnant, but you're still open to it. And that's kind of the church's idea of it. But also, you shouldn't be using it just to avoid having kids. It should be I can't have kids at this point in time, or having kids at this point in time would be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But not, and it's not contraception in that you're not denying the isms of sex, which are one for intimacy with your partner and also procreation, and NFP's open to procreation.
Exactly.
Yes. It's also, I think, important. My moral theology teacher mentioned at one point, he, not on this particular topic, but always think about it with this topic. And he said, how many Mercedes is one child worth? And there's a lot of people trying to get their best lifestyle first and put their career on track and then have the baby. And that's definitely not a grave reason to be postponing getting pregnant. There's never going to be this perfect time that we'll see to have a child in our life. That's up to God. And that's why the most essential part of NFP is praying together over whether or not it is time for you to have a child, because he's going to know much better than you're going to know when you're ready.
Right.
And when you need this child in your life.
Right. There's a discernment process to it, just like any major decision in life. There's that asking God's will, and if there's not a reason that you shouldn't be having kids, being open to having kids.
Right. Exactly. And there is, even Pope Pius XII had said that there can even be reasons to abstain from having children indefinitely. And one of the reasons they give is possibility of like birth defects or things of that nature. But it still has to be in a natural way. It has to be. There's never an excuse for artificial contraception. There's always NFP, which will always leave you open to God's will.
Right. And that's kind of the idea, is NFP is, practically speaking, as effective as other forms of contraception. But
even more so.
Oh yeah.
Right. And whenever you get to that point, you're open to God's will still, though, because there's no artificial means of stopping it. It's an all-natural situation.
Exactly.
You're having sex during a period where a woman is less fertile, and that's literally the only difference. If you weren't paying attention to it, you'd be having sex during that period anyways, so it's...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But mostly, it's not just any birth defect. Just like
right.
in cases of the life of the mother, like a woman who's had a significant number of C-sections. It gets to where, okay, she can't have more children. That's life-threatening on her. It would be the same thing for the child. It would have to be a significant birth defect,
right.
something that
life-threatening
could endanger the life of the child.
Right. It's heartbreaking, like what you hear. I think it was in Iceland, where you run into their aborting all of the children with Down syndrome, or strongly encouraging it, to the point that I saw a news article, I think it was about a year ago, about how it's nearly non-existent there, and they said, we eradicated Down syndrome. No, you committed genocide. It was
children. Yeah, exactly.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, oh gosh.
Yes. And same concept though with NFP. I would say that something like Down syndrome would not be a valid reason to.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
No.
Yeah, and I should be more clear. Birth defect is not even a good word to use. It'd be more of a life-threatening situation.
Right.
It would be a genetic thing that could happen, but would have to be life-threatening. And Down syndrome is a great example of people who are very happy.
Oh gosh, yes.
Absolutely.
Most loving people you'll ever meet have Down syndrome.
Absolutely. And on top of that, people with Down syndrome are capable of having fully independent lives even. I've seen multiple situations where someone with Down syndrome works a full-time job, they rent their own apartment, and they cook their own food. Mm-hmm. They're a fully independent human being who's
absolutely
100%
worthy of, life.
Yeah.
Just...
There are some of them that have heart defects at the beginning, but most of them thrive just fine. They don't have a lot of medical complications. It's very different when you're dealing with a lot of medical complications with a child.
Right.
But I know people who have been so open with that. There was my son's cardiologist told me about a woman who after she had her child with birth defect, she found out about one in India that had the same birth defect, needed the same kind of surgeries, and she adopted the child because she already knew what she was dealing with. And that's amazing. You know, that is not what the church calls us to on a regular basis, but if that's what you're called to, that's a heroic virtue there to say, you know what, I can be more open to this. I can invite more of this into my life.
Yeah, I would say that adopting children is probably one of the most noble vocations I would say you can have.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's sad to see that not as many people are doing it. And I mean, there's a pretty big economic reason for that in the United States. Like, I think it costs something like $60,000 to adopt a child in the United States.
Right, but there's a lot of avenues you can go through churches, and especially if you're willing to adopt an older child too, you go through certain agencies, especially pro-life agencies. It won't cost you anything.
Really?
A lot of times, if you go through a foster agency, though, you know, that's a heroic thing too, and even more so because at any point the parents might come back, and then your role is gone. You know, and that's even more heartbreaking. And now they have these open adoptions where up to 3 years the parents can come back and take the child.
Yeah.
So, you know, birth parents like that idea, but that's very difficult to get someone to sign on the other end to say you give all this love and affection and you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there was this a lady who went to our church at St. Joseph's who was she had several adopted children go through her home.
Several foster children
go through her home, and I mean, she wanted to adopt all of them, but eventually, she had to say goodbye to almost all of them. But she kept doing it, you know, because she knew it was her calling.
Yeah, she did it for a while, and then with the one son that she did adopt, she said, you know, it's hard on him. And it's no longer about us. It's hard on him to watch so many people walk in and out of his life. And she said she only fosters like 1 or 2 that they've known for a while, and the mom gets on the bandwagon and falls off. And that's a great thing for her to be able to do. And he knows this child so well, he thinks of her as like his sister, you know, so that part works well. But it's tough out there with those situations.
Right, absolutely. I guess to get back on the topic of NFP.
Yeah,
sure.
So I guess another thing that you hear a lot about with the little bit of research that I've done is, I mean, there's the pregnancy aspect of it, but there's also the intimacy of the partner associated with it. I mean, as a man, you obviously learn a lot more about what's going on with your wife's body, and, you know, understanding that there's other things or other ways of intimacy in a relationship when, you know, you're only able to have sexual intimacy at certain times of the month, for example. I mean, you have to find other avenues for intimacy and affection.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean that's what's one of the great things for me about NFP is that it's you actually have something to look forward to. It's not just, you know, when you want to, you know, and all that. It's just kind of it becomes more special when it's something you have to wait for.
Right. I mean, that's the same concept as, I mean, waiting for marriage in general. It's a lot more special if you wait till it's appropriate.
Absolutely. Yes.
You know, and the church talks about chastity according to your state in life. I think a lot of people forget that includes marriage.
Right.
Marriage is not some free-for-all. You know, a few years ago with the whole 50 Shades of Grey, I'm arguing on Facebook with people who are like, well, I'm married, I can read this. No, you can't. This is not your marriage. You cannot be doing this, you know? And so then it's like, yes, it's really hard to reach out to these people and make them realize that there is still a need for restraint within marriage. You made this vow to be exclusive to this person. And there is still a need for respecting that other person. You know, if you know, short-term reasons are more things like financially, if somebody's unemployed, then okay, probably shouldn't be trying to have another baby at that point. If there's so many children at the point that there's a lot of exhaustion or mental issues are starting to come up, some women with the postpartums, sometimes you have other issues, then you have to separate and say, okay, right now we can't have a baby. This is not for us. And then it does become very special when you get together. And we try to work on the intimacy at other times. I think a lot of times
we sort of tend to at times when we can't be intimate, we're both guilty of that kind of losing ourselves in our phones, our books, television, things like that, and not really spending time with the other person.
Yeah. It's important to keep dating, which we do occasionally, but it's also important just to spend more time with each other. And I think NFP, it gets this idealistic of, oh, you're gonna spend all this intimacy, and that's great. That's the ideal, certainly something to reach for always, but don't necessarily expect that it is the way people make it out to be.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, not even just in relationships, but even friendships, you run into that. I'll be, hanging out with a friend at their house or something, and, we're playing video games, hanging out for a little bit, and, someone will go to the bathroom, come back, and the other person's on their phone, you jump on your phone, and, you spend 20 minutes on your phone before you talk to each other again or something.
That is true, yeah. Oh, gosh, yes.
And, I'm sure Mike's mentioned our son, because of him, our lifestyle was very fragmented in many ways. One of the great things that people love to do is have dinner around the table as a community thing. And my son, he was very difficult to move with all his equipment.
Just to give a little more context, we had a special needs child who for many years lived on a ventilator. He was on a feeding pump 24/7, oxygen 24/7. So we, and unfortunately he passed away in April of this year. But we couldn't do things like that. We couldn't really sit around the table. We had to sit in the living room because we couldn't move all his equipment back and forth. I mean, he ate through a G-tube anyway, but beside the point, it was just way too much of a hassle to move him and all of his equipment to the kitchen table. So I'd say vast majority of our dinners were in the living room.
Yeah. And even now, I find it difficult to sit at the kitchen table because it's a reminder that now I can do this. And why can I do this? Because he's not here. And my daughter broke down crying sitting over the kitchen table one night. So it was like, oh my gosh, this is different for us. But a lot of people that I know who are NFP couples, that is a part of their family life, is that communal meal. And that's a great aspect. I know I grew up with it. I still have the thing of during dinner, you should not be talking on the phone. My parents would never pick up the phone during dinner time. And I think that's nice, that there should be some boundaries, because yes, we do become this techie culture that's FaceTime is not real time. It's not actually FaceTime. This is FaceTime, face-to-face time.
Right.
And we forget that because of these names that we make up for these virtual reality scenarios. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I've said in the past, I cantor at my church, and because of that, I have to go home every weekend. So, I mean, I can have, video chat calls or, call my parents or whatever, but there's nothing like actually being face-to-face and having that, And I also have a funny story I just want to share real quick because, you brought up answering the phone at the dinner table. When I was a kid, it was, we would get, these calls always around dinner time. And one of the things that my dad would do is he'd go answer the phone and he would answer Pentagon East Wing. And I don't think there was a single telemarketer that stayed on the phone for more than half a second at that point.
I'm going to try that.
That's great. That is a great way to do that. For me, I like to make the distinction with NFP. to say that this is not the rhythm method. Oh my gosh,
yes.
there's so many people who still think that the church is doing the rhythm method. No, this is like thinking that Catholics also use rotary phones and AFAX. Okay, guys, this is not today's technology at all. That was your grandmother's kind of NFP. Now, I mean, we hear about people using some of these methods to get pregnant, but people don't think about, oh, it can also be used to avoid pregnancy. And people who use NFP do that. So there are these machines out now where you take your waking temperature, which is one of your signs of fertility or infertility. It records that temperature on a monthly basis, and you tell it when you're on your cycle, what days, how long, and it can pinpoint the 5 days out of your cycle that you will have to abstain from sex if you don't want to get pregnant.
Yeah, it literally gives you like a green light and a red light, I think.
Yes, it's that precise on these things. So it's amazing how much precision is in these machines. They can tell a woman if she has not ovulated that month. It's incredible what can be done with the amount of information. There's another, the Marquette, I think for Catholics is similar to that. I have a lot of friends and family that their husbands work offshore here in Louisiana with the oil companies. And Marquette uses that 5-day window. It's precise like that. So that's what the girls use when their husbands are home for 2 weeks, off for 2 weeks, that's when you need to have just that precise window. And then there are others who use NAPRO. NAPRO is really good for post, right after you've had birth and trying to determine when you're going to get pregnant again if you're trying to avoid, because the woman will have her first ovulation before her first cycle. And most people don't even think about that. So, like my grandmother, when she had her 9 children, she had them all in a row and she never had a period between them because she would get fertile in between, and there she was pregnant. So, that helps with that. And it also helps with people who have trouble conceiving. I've heard of them learning crazy stuff like women who are allergic to folic acid, which is in almost every prenatal vitamin out there. And so she was having trouble keeping a healthy pregnancy. But through NAPRO technology, which works with doctors, they were able to pinpoint this problem and get her to a healthy pregnancy. So it's really incredible how far NFP has come from the rhythm method or the calendar method, where you were basically counting days and pretending every woman had a 28-day cycle at all times, which is not the case.
Yeah. So, how much more difficult is it when a woman's irregular with her periods? Like, does that add a difficulty to it?
That can add a difficulty with it. You become more regular with NFP. They teach you. I bought a book at the beginning because it was talking about, if you have all the time mucus, this is a problem because sperm can live in mucus. And if you're not one of these using one of these machines, and I would take my waking temp, but I would have to interpret it myself with charting. Then it's going to be very difficult for you to know when you're fertile and when you're not. So I bought a book. It was like $10, and it goes through many different scenarios with helping you with eating and knowing what you can and cannot eat. So anything that's hydrogenated can increase your overall mucus. So you want to get rid of, that's a lot of cookies that are out there on the market, different types of margarine. deli meats that have been prepackaged, you'll see they say water added, so it's kind of funny, but you learn that. So then for girls who, they have cramping or those kinds of issues, they also can learn what foods to avoid. So there's always another way rather than using the pill or as
Right.
Yeah, and
I guess another thing even is I've heard about, just from listening to videos and stuff on it, is that the pill is incredibly overprescribed, and it's more of it fights symptoms,
yes,
but it hides underlying issues, and these are things you can find when you use NFP, or these
Right.
underlying issues.
definitely.
Which gives you a more healthy and personalized understanding of things.
I read one story about a woman who she had an ectopic pregnancy. She'd only been using NFP for about 10 months. And before that, she had been on the pill for years. Well, she went to the doctor in pain and she's like, look, I'm having all these stomach cramps. And he was like, oh, he just blew it off. And her doctor was not an NFP doctor. And she said, if I had still been on the pill, those cramps would have been normal. I would have ignored them. It wouldn't have meant anything to me. She said, but because I'd been doing this for months now, I knew that this was not my body. This is not the way I regularly react to things. Something's going wrong. So Christmas Eve, she went to the ER, and thank God she was there because her ectopic pregnancy ruptured when she got into a bed.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so NFP saved her life because she's like, if I'd had an ectopic pregnancy while I was on the pill, which can happen, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. And I would have just ignored the pain and she would have been at home when it ruptured. So there's so many things. They say that the average woman changes her prescription every 6 months because of the side effects. She hates the side effects. But she's told, oh, I'm supposed to be on this, so let me try another one. Maybe this one will work with me. And there's no good thing about putting something unnatural in your body to stop the natural processes of your body. And I think a lot of the secular women who are becoming more open to the idea of natural family planning, although that's not the way they put it as like natural birth control. But they're realizing that, yes, putting this chemical substance into your body all the time, why would you do that? Why would you stop natural processes that are supposed to be happening?
Well, I mean, just tonight we were talking about someone you knew, this woman who was a vegan, but she was taking the birth control pill, and she was a vegan because she wanted everything pure in her body, but yet she was taking a birth control pill, and it was the guy she was dating or married to or whatever was dating was like, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You're all about everything being natural and making your body pure, yet you're putting these very harmful chemicals in your body, and it's just it's ridiculous.
But you're right, it's overprescribed. It's really the doctors who push it because unfortunately even the OBGYNs, I assume they're taught all this, but they don't plan to bring forward anything that they know about ovulation and all that with women. They just are treating them like, oh, well, there's a pill for that. I don't have to discuss
Right, the pill is the one size fits all for all women.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And it's so far from being that.
If you have acne, here's the
pill. I was just going to say that.
Here's the pill.
Yeah, I was
heavy flows or cramps, here's the pill.
I was just going to say that. I know a lot of women who take it for acne, and acne, and it's ridiculous. Oddly enough, I know some people who, I know a couple who's, not, they are Catholic, not very devout or anything, but they use natural family planning because the woman, the wife, is terrified of weight gain from the pill. That's her biggest fear. I mean, it's not necessarily the best reason, but it's still, she knows better, on a natural level,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because they can cause weight gain.
To God knows best, and the pill goes against God's plan. Natural family planning is God's plan, part of God's plan.
Yes, that it can help you, like we said, with so many different issues that you might have with, like with irregular periods. It can help regularize them. And if you just occasionally have an irregular period because of stress or whatever, around the time that my son died, I had a few irregular periods. But you still know it's coming on because you can tell when you've become infertile that it's coming earlier. These things are still able to be monitored, um, unlike it coming out of nowhere. If I was doing the calendar method and going, wait, why wasn't this 28 days? No, I know exactly what's going on with my body. Um, and I'm able to work with it. I mean, who doesn't ultimately want to do that?
Well, guys, I really appreciate you taking the time tonight to talk to me about natural family planning and your personal lives and sharing that with everyone. And I really appreciate it, and I think everyone else is going to really appreciate it too.
Yeah, and just to let you know too, the reason we chose this topic was it is National NFP Awareness Week in the States for sure. I don't know about other countries, but I know here in the States it is, and we've been really pushing our local priests to promote not only NFP but the church's teaching on natural family planning and things like that. It's just something we don't hear from the pulpit enough nowadays, and I'm happy to report that I have been hearing a lot more of it from the pulpit recently.
Yeah, I can honestly say I don't think I've ever heard about it in the church ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, you never really hear about contraception.
No, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, we're blessed to the church that we go to, St. Leo's in Roberts Cove. Our pastor does never really gives a full homily on it or anything, but he always works. He's worked in quite a few times, and I recently emailed every single priest that I know, texted every priest that I had a phone number of, and every priest I'm friends with on Facebook, asking them to prayerfully consider talking about the church's teaching on contraception this week. And the response was very, very, very good. Matter of fact, one of the priests that I talked to went to his mass this past Sunday, and sure enough, he did talk about NFP, Humana Vitae, the church teaching on artificial contraception, things of that nature. So it's I mean, don't be afraid to ask your pastors to talk about it. It's a sensitive subject, but confront them, ask them, why don't, very charitably ask them, why don't we ever hear about this?
Yeah. And I think Mike's asking, they say you have to earn the right to ask those questions.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that we have practiced NFP, even when it was very hard, knowing that we could possibly conceive another child, and I was constantly back and forth at the hospital with my son. How would that work into our lifestyle? But we were still open to God's plan. That makes him a powerful witness when he says, this is important. This is important for the church.
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful. I mean, that's the right way to look at it, I think.
Thank you for having us on.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Hey, everyone. I think that it'd be appropriate to say a couple of prayers for Michael, Nicole, and Joseph. O Lord, you are the joy and solace of the afflicted, and the shield of the faint-hearted. In your compassion, comfort those who are in mourning. Give rest in the bosom of Abraham to your departed servant Joseph, who died in the hope of rising to eternal life. For you are glorious God, and you love mankind, and we glorify you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, now and ever and forever. O Lord Jesus Christ, our God, you promised to grant the kingdom of heaven to those born of water and the Spirit, who came to you in innocence, for you said, let the children come to me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. We humbly beseech you to grant to your servant, the innocent child Joey, who has departed from us, the inheritance of your kingdom, according to your truthful promise. Grant that we may also live in innocence, and attaining a Christian end to our lives, may dwell with all the saints in your heavenly court. For you are the resurrection, the life, and the repose of all your servants, and of your departed servant, the child Joey, O Christ our God, and we glorify you, together with your eternal Father, and your all-holy, gracious, and life-giving Spirit, now and ever and forever. Amen. Hey everyone, thanks for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, you could thank me by liking, sharing, and subscribing. That's how you're supposed to do outros, right? Yeah, that's how you're supposed to do outros. Alright, thanks guys. Rejoice